Hi sourdough sisters, it's Aubrey here, and this message is for you or anybody else that wants to do a little bread yoga. I'm also sending it as a bit of a support message, a little yoga love support here. I have been getting a few questions from people, and the energy around learning how to make sourdough can be a little intimidating, to say the least. I started trying to make sourdough about 2 years ago. It was part of my yoga practice. Believe it or not, I was deep in my studies of ahimsa or non-harming, and I was looking at ways to really reduce our waste in our house and to purchase local whole grain, just amazing ingredients to nourish our body, mind, and spirit here at Heart and Soul Farm. So I started making sourdough. Carrie, Austin, and I went and checked out Janies Mill, which if you haven't done, I recommend. It will forever change your life as far as I'm concerned, and your view of bread and grains and just how beautiful it is. So because I made that connection, those are the exclusive flours I use, and I will talk a little more about flours and how that ties into everything, but I got a little sidetracked here. So long story short, it's been part of an ongoing practice for me for about over 2 years. When I first started, I created my starter from scratch, no dehydrated starter, nothing. It was not easy. And I was using it to bake every day. Pandemic hit, I continued to use it to bake every day. I didn't put it in the fridge like I suggested many of you do who are new to this, because I didn't even know that was an option. And it was a lot. And I never really got the hang of the loaves. I got really good at bagels and other things. Then I had a baby, then my sourdough baby died. And so it's been and my husband deployed, and I said, that's enough with the sourdough. It's overwhelming. I can't figure it out. I can't wrap my head around it. It's just too much. And I let it go. Then husband's back. Things are getting into a rhythm with our homeschooling and everything, and I wanted to try my hand at it again, and I again found myself super overwhelmed with everything that's out there. So I want to break it down a little bit for you guys, what I've discovered, and just share a few things with you to kind of encourage you to not get too overwhelmed by it, because it can be. I mean, bread makers, homesteaders, they have their own language, their own terms, auto-lysing, hydration, retards, all kinds of things that it's like its own little language, which is great. But I want to just stop and remind you guys that you know how to do this. And I know you're probably like, what are you talking about, Aubrey? I don't know how to do this. I don't. But you do. Somewhere deep in your roots, somewhere along the line, somebody in your family, I guarantee you, baked bread. And so really, as far as a yoga practice goes, it's all about tapping into those roots, your root, and trusting yourself. There's actually a practice in yoga, or a sister practice. It's called Ayurveda, which I've been studying for a while too. It's called the sister science of yoga, and it's all about the gut health, getting your gut back. And we're not just talking about the physical gut, which is important, but also the mental and spiritual gut here. So a lot of bread making is all about trusting your guts. In fact, it's so funny. In this book, I remembered the other day, The Path to Practice, she is an Ayurvedic practitioner, a very famous one, and she has these practices called sadhana. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Sadhana. And one of the practices, she has people actually just come to her house to knead bread and mill grains, because we've gotten so disconnected from our food and our food sources kind of collectively as a whole, that this is one great way to get back to your gut, your roots. So just remember that That's my suggestion. Remember that when you're doing this. Your great-grandparents didn't measure things by grams. They didn't talk about hydration. They didn't talk about any of those things. They put a certain amount of flour in a bowl. They took a cup from their cupboard that they knew. They put that much water in it, a little salt, and their starter, and that was it. And that's how they made their loaves, okay? So you can do that. They didn't have YouTube. They didn't have all this stuff that really sometimes can just muddy the water for us, okay? So again, let me break it down for you. You've got two ways you can make bread. You've got your yeast, the instant yeast, which our great-grandparents probably said, screw this sourdough business, I'm gonna get a faster loaf. So that's great for if you're going to make like a sandwich loaf or something you just wanna make quick. Most yeast baked breads take 2 hours start to finish, okay? Then you've got your sourdough, your naturally occurring yeast that you've trapped. I gave you guys those starters. Those starters, and if you aren't a sourdough sister, you can become one, let me know. But if you have a starter, you have an activated starter, that's what I gave you guys. It's an activated starter. It's good to go. You're not going to kill it if you follow the directions I gave you. You can take it out of the fridge and bake every day with it if that's what you want to do. No problem. I'm having trouble with my ear pod here. It's falling out my little ears. But if you just want to bake once a week, that's great. If you don't even want to bake once a week, you just want to take your starter out, discard half of it, give it to somebody else, a new baby, or just throw it in the trash, half a cup of flour. It's not a huge deal. Feed your starter, put it back in the fridge. Give yourself that grace, okay? Like, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Make your sourdough work for you. So you've got your starter, right? And if you're following the directions, if you're one of the sourdough sisters that I gave you, you'll take it out once a week. You'll remove half of the contents, and that is your discard, okay? And think of it as like sleepy sourdough. You've put it in the fridge to kind of slow it down from eating, and it's taken a little nap. So you've taken it out of the fridge, you've woken it up from its nap, and now you're gonna really need to wake it up to be able to bake with it. So usually, now some recipes you can use discard straight away. Some you're going to need to wake it up, which means you're gonna need to put equal parts of however much discard you had of flour and water, which is the same thing you're gonna do with your sourdough baby. You're gonna feed that baby flour, water, put it back in the fridge, okay? And then you can take it out a week later or keep it out, and just every day you'll have to do that process. Once you've put the flour and water in your discard, if the recipe calls for it, you're gonna leave it for like 4 to 6 hours so it can eat. When it eats, that's where those bubbles start to get created. That's when that yeast gets activated, really. In that same time, you will take your flour that you're using and mix it with water. A lot of recipes will tell you that. The flour and water will meld together. The flour will absorb that water. It takes flour a long time actually to absorb water. So while your baby's bubbling and getting nice, your flour and your water can start getting nice. Then you're gonna combine the two, okay? Once you combine the two, it'll all, again, be based on the recipe that you followed, but at some point there will be stretching and folding and fermentation, okay? So you might stretch and fold 4 times, whatever the recipe calls for, then put it in your fridge to ferment, take it out in the morning, shape it, put it in your form of whatever you're gonna shape, let it rise for about 1.5 hours. Usually that's the point where you start getting your oven preheated and your Dutch oven preheated if you're using one, and then you will put it in there in that hot pan. You'll flip over your mold if you're using like a Banneton basket or whatever, score it, put it in your cast iron, and it'll cook for however long it's gonna cook for. So really, it's a lot easier process than you think, and I'm sharing this with you because it's taken me a while to figure this out. I mean, I read countless books, blogs, YouTube videos, my kids' sourdough book, and it was just all very confusing. So take your starter out, discard, feed your starter, put your starter away, feed your discard if you need to, combine it with your flour and water combination, let it do its thing, and stretch and fold, and then it'll be ready to go anywhere. It depends, from what I understand, what I've read, and I could be wrong, again, I am no expert by any means, is you will either let it ferment out for about 12 hours, or you will put it in the fridge to ferment for about 24. So that's kind of the standard. Getting to flours, this is another important thing I'm learning. Not all flours are created equal. So this is what complicates recipes. Whatever flour you choose to use, find recipes that are specific to it. I use Janies Mill flours, which are whole, they stone ground their flours, which means they act far differently than your standard grocery store flour. They absorb differently. They don't need quite as much work because they're higher in protein, which means the gluten development happens faster, which is really awesome. And guess what? Janies Mill is awesome. They have recipes on their website. In fact, this past week, they just put out one for an artisan loaf using their artisan flour that I plan to try this weekend. So I love that. They make it simple, they make it concise, and once you get the concepts down of, okay, that's what I'm doing, following those recipes is super easy, and you don't have to worry about 75% this, 25% that. I mean, I don't know about you, I don't like trying to do math while I'm baking. And bottom line is just follow your gut. Like, see what's there for you. See if your gut says, ooh, this doesn't seem quite right, and trust it. What's the worst can happen? Like the girl over at Jones Homestead, you bake bad bread. Who cares? It's 3-4 cups of flour, but you tried something, and you tried to make something wonderful for you and your family. And I think that that's what's most important, and how we can really practice yoga by making and baking bread. You know, like, how cool is that? You get to find your yoga, your roots, and create something with that and share it with others. That's pretty awesome, and it's an awesome way to practice your yoga and share and experience it off of your mat, like I'm always such a huge proponent of. Anyways, that's what I've got for you guys today. I just want to let you all know how fun it's been on this bread journey with you, and I appreciate all of you guys sharing and asking me questions. It's been a lot of fun, and if you have any questions you think I might be able to answer, I will try. If you have any suggestions of like, oh yeah, Aubrey, you got that, or you kind of missed the mark on it, like I said, I'm not an expert, go ahead and put those down there, especially Allie over at Matriarch Bread. I know you've got a little jump on us with the home baking, so any tips and tricks from anybody, please feel free to share them. I will continue this private message for our Sourdough Sister group. If you would like me to add anybody to it, or you know anybody that wants to be added to it, I can absolutely do that. If you pass on a sourdough starter to somebody and you want them to be included in our group, just let me know. Send me their info and I will add them to that. And yeah, let's have fun. Let's bake some bad bread, let's bake some good bread, and most of all, let's just get in touch with our gut. Okay? So that's all I've got from my heart, soul, and farm to yours. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and enjoy baking again. Namaste.